Ok, bonsoir et merci beaucoup d'être venu à la conférence, à la dernière conférence de ce semestre d'automne. La conférence aura lieu en anglais, du coup je vais aussi, I will switch to English to introduce our guest. This evening we have the enormous pleasure to welcome Anupama Kundoo at the School of Architecture of Fribourg. Anupama graduated from the University of Mumbai in 1989 and received her PhD from the TU Berlin in 2008. She started her research-oriented practice in 1990 in Auroville in India, and since then has built extensively in India and has had the experience of working, researching, and teaching in different contexts around the world, in Europe, in the US. She is currently professor at the Technical University of Berlin. Her practice is based both in Berlin, Germany, and in Pune and Pondicherry in India. I had the pleasure to listen to a lecture of Anupama a few years ago in Lugano, and I was really impressed by the quality of her work and by her approach. So I would say that there are lectures with the small letters and are lectures with capital letters, lectures that we may forget faster and others that we keep with us for a long, long time. This is the case of Anupama Kundoo's one, because both of the extraordinary architectural quality of her work and her passion, and moreover, because of her architectural approach that is based both on a deep curiosity and exploration of material resources, but as well, and more importantly, of human resources, such as ingenuity, time, skills, care, and sense of community. Her committed research and architecture, based at the same time on a low environmental impact and a positive social impact, made her work more than relevant today. Anupama was just telling me that among the different recognitions and awards that she received on her career, she was very proud recently to receive nearly at the same time 2 different awards: the Auguste Perret Prize that recognize the quality of the technical, from a technical point of view of her work, and the Charles Jenks Award that recognize the theoretical quality of her work. So she's very, for her, this is very, represent well her holistic approach, at the same time practical and also theoretical. And we really thank you, Anupama, for being here with us and for sharing your work tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. I have to use this, right? Yeah. So, good evening, everyone, and thank you so much, all of you, for organizing over all these months to have me here today. And I really look forward to exchanging, talking to you all. As you know, I don't know all the languages spoken here at all, but I can manage with German in addition to English if you want to have discussions later. So I also want to, I will be speaking, of course, in English, but I have tried my best to convey my very technical kind of work with as many pictures and as easy as possible to discuss, because it's in the evening and you have been all doing very many things. I am aware of that. I have to say I'm very touched also to meet Juliet, no? And I have never, thanks to you, first of all, I think nobody must be so keen to listen to a lecture than you know, to put in so much effort. So I feel even more like sensitive about this to share my talk so that it is meaningful for you all and for you in particular. And thanks to you, I talking about technologies, which we are going to do, I think it's such a great use of technology I have not yet experienced. This is thanks to you the first time I have this device, that I think this is a very good example of technology being put for good use to advance the human potential. And that's what actually I want to speak about. And I feel that we have, in a post-industrial age, we have been using technology sometimes also mindlessly, and that a lot of the problems we face, environmental, social, and economic, are very often man-made problems of how we are organizing our resources and how we are organizing the new materiality that we have enabled for architecture and the built environment through how we make our buildings and our cities. We have seen a rapid change in the last 100-something years. So I want to speak about those things, and the resources, the aspect of resources. We have been always talking about it from the point of view of sustainability, as it is spoken, at least what I hear in the West, that all the resources are getting over, we have to use less, and there is a kind of pressure and a moral, and it has to be there to self-reflect, but there is a feeling of first we have overused and now we are guilty to use. It's not, we are not still seeing it in a balanced way, I feel. And we are mostly, when we talk about resources, we talk about natural resources because we are very panicky that all this is getting over. And I want to talk to you about my work in a more personal way through my journey of 33 years actually in the practice. I just graduated and I started my practice, which is very strange. But I came from one of the schools, like in Spain also, with a very strong technical base. And it was partly because I was very idealistic and I didn't want to work in typical offices where I felt I may be contributing to the problem. It was not out of arrogance, it was out of some naive not knowing how complex things are. But actually that naive aspect has also protected me. And I want to also I want you all to be empowered with your innocence also, I feel. Because if you know too much, you can block yourself. And it's important to know what you don't know. And then just to navigate. Because human beings will always be in a situation where the past knowledge is not going to be enough to navigate the future. It's up to us what we are going to do, because we are an evolving species like every other species, but in our case, we are using our own mind in our evolution, So I believe in evolution, and I believe what we make, it makes us. And how we make architecture, it also makes us. So I'm not interested in only talking about resources in that manner of finite resources from the planet. Everything is getting over. Water is getting over, everything is getting depleted. And there, I think I have a bit of my own philosophical approach, maybe because I'm born in India and that's maybe my worldview or whatever. But I think, when I think of resources, I first think of human resources. I think of the resourcefulness. And I feel, as much as the natural resources are finite, I think the human resources are infinite. Our brain, our memory, our care, our hand skills, our knowledge, it is all infinite. And when we use that, then we don't pollute anything, we only evolve. There's no problem. If we fail, then we still have evolved by making those experiments. So I believe in focusing on the human resources, the human resourcefulness. Even when I talk about rethinking materiality, I'm not so interested in talking about materials as if they are something external. Is concrete better or a rammed earth wall? This is not about a morality, this is good, that is bad. Everywhere in the world, some material exists in the earth. Either we use it directly, or we manipulate it, or we do something and then use it with using more energy. So I like to come out of the moral judgment and just have a very deeper reflection, which is technical. It involves knowledge, but it also involves our consciousness, and also putting the focus on how is the human being doing in the middle of all that. Are we liking what we are creating and all of that? So from that point of view, I would like to talk about rethinking materiality, and I do want to discuss materiality not for the material themselves, but how did the humans interact with the material. It's not whether a wood building is problematic or advantageous today. How it could be hundreds of ways, or if it's earth, is the earth from there or is it being exported from far away? You know, everything is much more complex than just saying earth is good, then is wood, then is stone, then is it's a bit silly, because human beings have built with whatever material was lying around them. You know, and even if they have ice, they are building with ice. If they have wood, that is how we have done. I think the material was not, we've made our problem today typically to not take responsibility and put it on us. We are putting it on the material. We are saying this material is better, that material is better, this is worse. But I think the point is how to use what is lying around you, where whichever material you are using, are you doing it intelligently? Are you doing it? Is it the best use of your resources? Is it the best use of your time? Is it the best environment we spend all these resources? Do we like what we did? Is going to outlive our lives? You know. So these are the questions I want to discuss, and I want to just give you a little bit background of, you know, having grown up in a country like India, where I got to see more tangibly that for me, material, that the fact that buildings are made from whatever is lying around, and either it is done in a basic way, or it's done in a more refined way, or it's done in a extremely refined way. It's the same with food. You can take the same ingredient, you can make a common meal, or you can be a chef and, you know, put together with the same ingredient something very contemporary. Contemporary doesn't have to have a material that's not from elsewhere. Like the chefs are doing that, but architects are not yet doing that. Because I think that in all the norms that we have created, and I'm kind of blaming, I'm telling it lightly, that during the industrial developments, we actually outsourced some of our intelligence to some over-standardized things, and we created regulations, etc., very rapidly. And in places like Europe, as easy as it is to create, every problem is almost trying to be solved by a new regulation. But to undo the regulation is a long process in a democratic society. So 30 years ago, we were talking, when I graduated, promise you, they were talking about the same environmental problems or whatever, like we talk now. We knew all this already. At least we knew when we graduated. And nothing has really changed. It has become more. So I feel that has occupied me. That's why I thought so much about these things. Where is exactly what we should be more responsible, or where is something more to be reflected in the architectural, in the minds of in our society, you know? Like, instead of saying let's put more and more regulation and stop more and more freedom, the regulations and the number of building competitions we have, they are not improving. You know, we are not getting such better buildings that are performing better. I mean, something is still to be thought. So I want to share with you that in most past buildings, I noticed that people were using the human mind, the human hand, the skills. We had to cultivate our eyes to see better, to understand beauty. We had to cultivate our mind to understand geometry, to understand all the order. We had to cultivate basically ourselves. And then the building was becoming fine. And whatever we made was lasting till today. Those are still a stone building we may use or not. It is a space that is still usable. And this is not happening to most of our buildings. So the reality in Bombay, where I grew up and where I come from, that keeps on making me think till today. Whatever I do, even you will see smaller projects later, you will know that as a person who grew up in Bombay, I never can forget that that is a reality. It's a mega city, and on that kind of reality of a certain organic growth, we are imposing a standardized way of building and living, which involves a incredibly oppressive amount of repetition. Even if an apartment is beautiful, if you repeat anything that many times, like in the Plattenbauten in Germany, you see that it can get very oppressive. It could be all efficient. So there is a chasing for efficiency, and then you ask yourself, that's what you get. More than half cannot afford it, and therefore they have to live like that. Because nobody is questioning, in all the poverty discussions, in homelessness, in my times, nobody was questioning that have we made the standard so high that nobody can afford a house? Nobody is questioning. It's not allowed to be questioned. We are just thinking, what is the square meter price of this and that? And nobody is questioning how much land contributes, what are the power structures behind. So, and we keep feeling that is the only way we can now build, even though it is actually creating two cities in one. And then that kind of for me, it's over-designed, honestly. I found it was over-designed, and more than anything, it was not even beautiful. I didn't know which is even more ugly. I still don't know which one is more ugly. I don't know what, really, I honestly sometimes feel that those things in the background are almost more ugly because it's deliberately created by technical people who are supposed to be experts, and they have charged a lot. So, and the other is the opposite, and even there is some beauty in that. And then there is another aspect that when I graduated, I was worrying about is the materiality I talked to you about. Because even a material like brick, which used to be earlier, pre-regulation, it was allowed to at least carry load. Now it's not allowed in most places because of some new seismic rules everywhere, or some gravity. The gravity didn't change, The gravity literally did not change anywhere. And even the biological need for intimacy or protection, climate is the only one changing, but not that drastically. And also these things are not performing better to the climate either. So it's very, very worrying why we have been raised with better solutions to architecture. Like even Louis Kahn is supposed to have said, what does a brick want to be? He wants to be an arch. And now we cannot, all the forefathers' logic is put in the dustbin, and we have to, even in Australia, they are calling it, everywhere I traveled, they are saying veneer, brick veneer. It's just for decoration on top of something. And then the irregularity which we like about the brick, which is not allowed to be irregular, then we have to make design pixels that they become again irregular through the computer. It's like, it's going crazy, First, so all of this makes me think that concrete is a new vernacular. But all the other materials are often used as a joke because we don't feel good with how the things we're using, how they look, despite Bauhaus and everything. We are lost a little bit, I felt, And so when I started and this, all the excuse given for this, when I was growing up, I heard, was because we have to be more efficient. And we in the developing countries were told that the developed countries are more efficient, so we have to be more and more efficient. So everything was supposed to be done because a human hand, that's too costly. We have literally disengaged the human from every area of contribution. And I used to feel jealous when I watched the spiders and the birds and the bees. They don't need any license. They're going on creating, they are born and they're creating habitat. And it looks weird for me to say this in this context, but actually most of the places in the world, people are still building and most of the beautiful vernacular habitat all over the world were built with whatever is lying around by the people, whoever, whatever they were able. And because they were trying so hard to use whatever was around, they became clever. So every year after year, somebody was up to Guastavino's work, you know. Because in New York, he has to build bigger and bigger spans, taller and taller buildings. They were finding more and more ingenious ways to make the span bigger and the curves flatter. And there was always Hagia Sophia to Notre Dame. There's always evolution, with the human being getting more and more clever, building more and more bigger challenges with the same more and more knowledge of technology. So for me, it was frustrating. And I started asking myself that what is the point of this efficiency? What is the point of doing efficiently things that should not even be done at all? I was, of course, young and rebellious at that time. Actually, I was not rebellious, but I wasn't afraid to ask basic questions, just because everybody thinks, how can you ask such a basic thing? And nobody is asking, you know, like the emperor's new clothes. But I used to ask at least myself, you know, at least my diary is full of those type of questions. And I was asking myself, okay, if the whole point was to save all this time for the humans, like I enjoy the washing machine because I don't have to do it myself. Okay, and when I save the time, I am able to cook or do something. My question is, with all the time we have saved, where is the time? Why are we more stressed? Where has the time gone? I mean, I know it's ironical, okay? And we have successfully managed to disengage the human. So now, wherever you phone for any other solution, which the human was decentralized giving solution on every travel desk, everywhere, now they tell you instead, oh, ich bin nicht dafür zuständig. Like, I can't, the system won't let me solve this. Everybody, like there's an intelligent human there, but the computer, who's a less intelligent, will not let us use our intelligence everywhere. Why? Because of the standardization and standardization structures and norms and regulations. So in today's time, I almost feel we can upgrade that famous sentence to form follows regulations. It's happening. And there is not a mechanism to question easily. And even if there are standards, and I'm not against standards, many people say the standards are not letting us, we have to use this terrible building insulations, and actually it's not true. You do the math and you can, if you actually go into it and do the calculation, you can actually find clever ways to do it. And we are part of the people who created the norms, and we can go on, you know, advancing the knowledge. So from that approach, when I left Bombay and I started, you know, discovering, I was going one layer below, and I started coming down to the sourcing of material. I was doing normal projects on the side, but I kept on inquiring, and I started realizing, for example, that it all begins at the scale at which even materials are produced or things are produced. You are ordering things from a material catalog, and that's where it begins. It's like a child making a Lego. By the way, we didn't have Lego also in India, which was not a bad thing. Nowadays, they don't only have Lego, they have Minecraft. So you start with a block, which you cannot rotate, and even the brick, you can use any shapes, but the Lego has those 4 things, so you can only use it quadratish. You cannot, I mean, so it conditions you. Basically what I'm saying is, we get indoctrinated to do some things, and even in those days, the Lego was allowing you to make, you know, you would just get blocks. People, my generation, people who played with Lego usually got a box of different shapes and they would make whatever they want. My children's generation, they get a specific Lego car with pink, with a girl driving this and that. And they can only assemble that, and they've made that, and now they have to buy the next Lego castle or some animal. So the poor child feels they created it. You know, they don't know that actually someone else has designed that whole thing. They are the mere assembler. And on top of it, they don't even know that they didn't create. And I think the same happens to architects. they are, in a way, just assembling. So I wanted to go more behind, and seeing who is actually designing our lives, and our building blocks. And I wanted to understand material for myself. So I started realizing, and I'm just sharing with one materials experience, and I've done that with so many materials. According to wherever I went, I realized there is when you compare an industrially made brick, for example, with a traditionally made brick. I'm just taking brick, why? Because it's the first manufactured material, okay? But I applied this logic to all materials, just to know what industrialization actually did, how we think of it, but maybe how it may be actually influencing us. So people who made bricks, they are not just working 9 to 5 jobs in a factory. They are probably rice farmers, and in that area, when near the river where the clay collects, in some part of the year, they have to spend that clay. They have to, in the rest of the year, grow those trees for which they will make their own forest, and from those thin branches, they will cut them off to use as a fuel. And the kiln, it needs 980 degrees to convert earth into brick. It's a lot of heat. They would use it with wood or whatever they have around, biofuel mostly, but very interesting, which I only took years of observation to realize, that the walls of the kiln, in a modern kiln, the brick wall absorbs 40% of the heat you generated, each firing. Half is going into the wall. In these cases, ancient people all over the world, in the non-industrialized countries, they still make it like that. The kiln is the wall. Like if you play with Jenga, if you make that tower, you have to make the products have to balance, and the kiln is the construction. Then you close it with mud plaster. And yes, your kiln walls will absorb some of the heat, but it won't be fully cooked through. But that's fine. When the whole bricks are done, you take down the pile, it becomes a field again. And those people, all the work's cost is not put only on the brick. That person is also doing agriculture and selling rice and selling. They are part of a large territorial system of activities. I started observing what industrialization does to us. It takes a creative person and they have to just sit. You have to watch a film by Harun Farooqi on comparing all brick making across the world. Very important film. And then you start seeing what really what is a human doing, basically. What is the repetitive job of the industry? And the industrial kiln is probably more high energy. And yes, they may be delivering a little stronger brick. But do we need that extra strength? I would say good enough is perfect. Do we have, just because a bridge can be made of concrete, must every park bench be made of concrete? It's really a question. Are we doing it because we love the concrete, or is it because of the habit? I think a lot of things we do are just the sheer habit of repetition and thinking we don't have choices where we actually have choices. So part of it is lazy habits, part is regulations. But there's a lot of thinking I feel that needs to be done. And I started realizing the same as with brick is also with lime, Portland cement is the industrialized 2-minute Maggi noodle version of the homemade pasta, because people are anciently using different cements. So if you use earth building, if you build with the earth on your soil, or with the lime you have to know a lot of material science in a way that a collective does know, But as a graduated architect, you may not know if you are only learning from the standards. And because nowadays, in our insurances and all, we don't let the craftsmen take responsibility. So a whole world of knowledge is getting cut off, in my opinion. So I started thinking very deeply what implications this has and how, because in my country, I had the opportunity. I decided to really take my motorbike and travel everywhere, see for myself and teach myself things that I didn't get to see in school, because I was worried about the transition that is happening and how it affects the local communities, that it is not, the transition for me was not looking like an evolution or a progress. It was looking a little bit like a higher, more wisdom, like more wise. They are not formally educated, but there are more wise habits were being replaced by some contemporary, maybe more superficial habits, or I don't know. I just started chasing that. And then I noticed that even in a country like India, I come from Bombay, but when I started doing projects and saying, you know, obviously it's a given that I don't need to do green building ratings and nothing. I know that local material is healthier and that a local food and organically grown, it's a common sense. I should use that. I wanted to put whatever little money I have into the people, into their craft and into their knowledge for them to grow, rather than into expensive materials and then no money for the people. I felt no, that doesn't make sense. It's like a woman's householding method, you know, of resources. I was saying no. All the money for the people, whatever is lying around, we convert to architecture. And I found there was so much resistance. In modern day, the same stone, because there is stones on the ground, deeper down in the ground, in today's economy, it is considered expensive. Everyone is saying, no, it's not possible. And I started doing the math for each project and establishing that all this work that I did, and including my research, it was cheaper. Each time I was questioning, I came out with more knowledge, more empowerment, and more. I started feeling comfortable in the uncertainty, you know. It started becoming like I'm getting a kick out of it to expand more knowledge, and, you know. And I noticed that the same applied to every other material, like in the same territory where I went and I thought there was nothing over there. A new city was being planned in Auroville. And I said, and the more I stayed there, I saw, because in the handmade scale, there are these huge landscapes, and the humans who are extracting, for instance, in this case, he's extracting stone still by hand. It's quite intelligent way how the stone is split by the ancient people. Even now they're doing it. I found that you don't see the humans, you know. The impact of the man-made is so light that it can easily pass you by when you come from a big city, that these are still going on. And even in Spain, when I travel, and many people were saying in Europe, you can't do. I started seeing there's so much artisanal things that if you were to see the skill, that it can be actually diverted into architecture, I felt that should be very easy, because humans are so clever and adaptable, they will learn anything. It doesn't have, because we think, you know, one course of architecture is so many years, and so we think, oh, how will that guy be a mason? No, a farmer can actually be a mason, because if he's growing up artistic, they are growing up with eating good food and knowing good music. You know, people like to draw, they can learn. It's really, I noticed people can learn things. So initially, I started doing contemporary interiors by diverting handcrafted things. It was a high budget project, but I was always trying to engineer things in a manner that how this piece is standing there, but the whole thing looks sculptural, and it doesn't look like efforted green building. I was trying to just create more beauty with resources where the humans and the many hands that are involved in making it, they can leave their mark, and that can stay forever. And even if you remove it from here, because it's on a loose cobblestone, it can be put anywhere else. It's a system you can just use. So similarly, I started noticing the material is an inert thing. It will last forever and ever. I mean, it will maybe not, the architecture may not last, but the materials will be there, or they will degrade, but the molecules will be there. But what I started becoming interested in is what happens to the human being and their knowledge and skills, etc. So while these are all images about materials, please see it from the perspective of the human life in it, for me, as relevant. And my first project, this one, was because I came across, I had to build a house, and I was in the context of a future city, and I was thinking that there are all these potters, you know, and they were losing their livelihood to urbanization. And I thought, how could their skills be absorbed into making roofing systems or things like like that, which are superior. It would be a better roof for us, but they will have their jobs forever, you know, and how will they manage this transition? So, because nobody is going to buy cooking pots from them, but that's what they always did ancestrally, so they keep trying to sell that. So I started diverting these kind of community, skills to produce things that, and by the way, I was at that time with 23 years, so I started that office. I had no idea what all can go wrong. So it was okay that it turned out good for me. But there was a lot of risks taken, which I actually realized many people were telling me, you're taking so many risks and all that, as if it's really a bad thing. But I used to tell them, because I was very naive, I used to tell them, hey, you are taking a bigger risk because at least I have a 50% chance to succeed and 50% to fail. Whereas you are repeating a thing which is already failed, so it is 100% risk of your whole life. For what have you living? You know, I was very young, I was arguing like this. I used to not get discouraged for some reason. That's the thing. I was not sure, I was not confident about what I'm doing, but I was not thinking that fear should not be my advisor, you know. I don't want to repeat something that I'm critical about. So I started doing, because I was so young, I wanted the craftsmen and everyone to understand what I'm doing. So I used to do a lot of things in one-to-one on the site so that they can help me to create this kind of architecture. Later I will come to these cement things, okay, screens called ferrocement. But basically, these are some pictures, you know, and I've got a picture of you all, for you all to see me. You can see, right, that I am today more confident. At that point, I was like, I thought there's nothing here. With what are we going to build? And everybody was building in reinforced cement concrete. I was influenced by Le Corbusier and all this concrete thing, and I was a big fan of modernism and all that baggage to leave, you know, and go for it. And I actually knew a lot about concrete, but I didn't feel that I didn't feel it, deserve some respect. I didn't want local village people to just make concrete suddenly without understanding the chemical thing. And but I was just going around. Today I see a lot in this picture. That time I thought there's nothing here. Today I see in the foreground there's clay. That's the material. In the background, there is potters. That is a skill and a material, and that will make the architecture. But at that point, I was seeing there's nothing. You know, coming from Bombay, I didn't notice there is clay. I was just thinking these poor guys are struggling. And then I learned enough from the brick, and I said, I don't want to produce all this in factories. So we were designing all these things and making them, also fire them. I also felt like, why should these nice people of this village life have to go inside those 8-hour factory, bad conditions, without any safety regulations, how I've seen factories being, you know. So I thought they can make, whenever we have a need, beside all their rice and all, the same potters in their style with coconut. And then I took help because the engineers were not actually agreeing to do my work. They were telling, oh, this will never work, that will never work. And there also I tried my best to argue, and I used to say, is it really not going to work, or is it that you don't know how to make it work? I used to try a little bit, you know, too. But they were like, it was my early years, so you can't do much. But I used to say, no, forget about the engineer. First, I'll go to the craftsmen who never behave like that. They were excited to make something. So I used to go with the craftsmen, make some mock-ups, do some load test, and then go to the engineer. Today, of course, afterwards, very good engineers were ready to work with us. But in the beginning, it's a real difficult thing to do something. But I'm so glad I didn't give up. Today, if somebody tells me it's not possible, even if it's not possible, if they just tell this is not possible straight away, I'm not going to change the design. I'm going to change the engineer. This is sure. Because now I know that, listen, people who have that attitude, they are looking for, they want jobs to be in their comfort zone. So it's not matching my partnership, you know. And I'm saying it in a very serious way, because the really good engineers, they don't talk like that. They say, okay, how can we make it work? Or this is good in it. What is, you know, this, let's do 2 tests about this, something else. But they'll never say, forget about this. it can never work. Whoever says it, that means he can't even imagine that something could work than what he has already seen. So that's what I learned. But then through all that, I managed to create, this house, which became famous. It's also on your poster, a wall house. It's not built even with it is not built with the regular bricks. I have deliberately built with the pre-industrial brick of that region in an exposed brickwork, only to show the people, because all these bricks are plastered and nobody sees what is holding the thing. So I wanted to make the modern version of it, because I realized that with Louis Kahn coming to India and using all industrial bricks and handsome buildings, we all wanted that kind of bricks, And we started calling these bricks in a derogatory way, like weak bricks. They are called weak bricks. Instead of saying these are handmade bricks, like Peterson here, they are selling it for more money. Here, we say, oh, these are the bad bricks, because they don't have the money. And I realized that I'm going to celebrate that the bad brick I understood now that the bad brick is a good brick, because I understood all the details inside it, what's going on with the human factor, the socio-economic factor, and even the performance. And because they are slightly weaker, I have to make the wall slightly thicker, and because of that, automatically, the climatic comfort is also coming in. So it can be a mono material, it can take its weight. So anyway, these are the kind of things I was doing. And each experiment with a community of skills, it made me realize more that can be done. So I would keep getting other ideas, when I would, travel around. I say, oh, there's another thing. This was the original pot that they make for cooking, which nobody is using anymore because we use metalware everywhere. But this pot, I got an idea how to use it in construction by making lost form work for concrete. Because then I started bringing my concrete love and my knowledge of concrete to the picture, because in this system, like a waffle slab, I'm saving 2 bars of steel every 3 bars. I'm using 60%, at least, like saving at least 40% to 60% in some cases. And as the slab thickness becomes bigger and bigger, like the span becomes bigger and bigger, I save more. And on top of it, in these simpler areas, form work is a very expensive part of concrete. And in this case, I don't need form work, because this is the form work, And it is an engineering strategy it's a holistic strategy. It takes care of, to some extent, the acoustics, many things, there are many advantages. Of course, in this building, I have done it to test it because it was my house, that one. But actually, at that time, I was testing it for a 14-meter span structure, a multi-purpose hall. And so I was trying different things, Even, for example, the wooden table here, I have made out of one log, So I was thinking of conserving resources, conserving natural resources and celebrating human resources. That was my approach. It was much more about celebrating human resources, including knowledge, including engineering, and just collective work. And so each thing I did led me to more like, this is a trapezoidal shaped. Of course, these are things you can also buy industrially. But we found ways that not only potters, but also we could extrude it very simply on the side. So we had to design those machines and so on to be able to do roofs. See, the first roof I showed you needs the form and to hold its weight, but it cannot be used as a roof, or a terrace. The other roof I showed you, it is for an intermediate slab which doesn't require insulation. And this, I developed this for the situations where I want to use the roof above, or I don't want to be restricted to the, form of the catenary vault. So with all of these, in the wall house, which is my house, I managed to put together all these different experiments, and I was only concerned, how will it not look like a cacophony of all the things I have to test at the same time, It was just my testing ground. But still, I'm so happy that that house, which I am the one who sees a lot of flaws in it because I know the compromises I made. But MoMA has come one day to acquire the drawings and the, I wish I would have thought at that time. I was, not preserving all my sketches and my, in David Chipperfield's Venice Biennale, they built it in one-to-one, we built it in full scale. So many things happened with this house, but actually it was just a simple house for me to have a very small space and a very big veranda. So the residential part, the intimate part is only 2.20 m wide, like a train, and it's to save area and so on. And the other side is very open and social. So all these activities are, including the bathroom, are positioned there. And because all the people from the village and many other people were copying also this roof technique, and I didn't want to tell all the architects, the journalists, what I did. So I made all my sections like elevations, made my elevations like sections. So even if I forget, I was living in a way that really in a monsoon weather, the drawings will not last, and you can see in the building everything, somewhere or the other, the wall pattern in the lintel, everything is shown, the things you don't see. In fact, one thing you cannot see is the wall house was standing on rammed earth, cement stabilized rammed earth foundation. Actually, I've never discussed that, but many, many experiments in this project. And prior to building that house, when I left, I even don't count this as a design project, but it perhaps is. It was my first hut. I realize a lot of people on very low budgets are living like that in India. And while living in it, but I tried to make it as beautiful and very, I really, really love this project because I thought it will just last for a year or two, but I spent 10 years living in it. And because I used to live like this, all the other projects I was doing for other people, I had to question from scratch how much is too much, how permanent should architecture be, how temporary can we renew. For example, just by living like this, all I had is my motorbike and solar panels. I was living off the grid. With that, I was living, it's very symbolic also of the adventurous life I started living, because I was discovering and I realized that if you just cross that line, that tightrope of comfort zone and adventure, then there is a whole expansive universe which is really fun. So I did that, and like this, I was saying, this bike and the solar panel were literally more expensive than the house. When I used to sleep under this kind of ceiling, I've done all this to avoid walls, as many elements, avoid, minimalistic. But the most important discovery for me was that every day I used to look at the ceiling and I used to wonder how clever, when we used to have huts, that a round wood cross section, it allows, the same tree, by the way, it is not made with proper timber because I couldn't afford that. It was made with the same wood which they use for firewood or for scaffolding in the previous slides I showed you, those brick kilns. And this wood, it takes about 3 years or something to grow. Now, if I had done it like an architect, I would have taken the same area and I would need it rectangle, okay? And for that, the tree would have to be at least that much. So I would need 25 years to grow. Then I'm going to cut a rectangle. I used to think like that when I look up. How can we have forgot? Like, we are not thinking. It took me so long to even get the question in my head, that I understand standardization's potential. If I'm doing millions of houses of that identical section and one drawing to repeat it, yes. But even most of the houses and architecture remains unique. We are on unique plots, it's custom made, and one house will be built with different lengths, different diameter required. With a tree, it's thick and it goes thinner, and I'll use the thin part somewhere, the thick part somewhere. This rectangle business, at what cost does it come? Because for one house, also I have to spend the same as if I would make 1 million houses. These questions used to come. rhetoric questions, I used to ask myself that from being so simple, how it became so complex, and where in between all that range, how to act for each project. So while I started trying to strengthen my knowledge with the skilled people, or whatever skills they are not even called educated. On the other hand, I realize that even some people who are educated or who are in this deliberate communities, co-housing projects, I realize that many people are not getting a chance to participate. Some people don't have the basic money to go to a bank and get a loan, so they will never come out of the circle. So if there is no opportunity for people to participate in the construction, sometimes people can only have that option of sweat equity, that through your work you're giving some, but the technologies are alienating us from, even in urban areas, from participating. So I started thinking about all those things, and I used to, like this rammed earth walls, I just try to, in my housing projects, try to create, a balance of a few experts and a lot of work that anyone can do if they want to. It should not be because, in Bombay, there's so many projects where now the contractors from Singapore or somebody has to have done 3 schools to be allowed to even do a competition for a school. Or for many other housing projects, you have to show how many millions you have done. So it's like saying you're only allowed to practice architecture if you are doing mass production. But actually the whole idea of architecture is we have many small studios who are doing careful work. It's like if you would go to hairdresser and they will say, no, how many heads can you treat in a day? Or how many have you done in your life? Otherwise I can't, It's like, sometimes I used to ask myself, like, is the big budget a measure of a good movie? Or is it, what happened to the human scale of production? But I tried my best inside all those growing scales, like this co-housing kind of projects, to bring all this into the mainstream as much as I could, even though they were never allowing my work to be called mainstream. They kept on, when they praise me, call me alternative, thinking I'll be very happy. But I was saying, call me an architect, I'll feel more happy, Because they were just putting us in another box if you're trying something else, saying, all this is very good, but now it doesn't apply to us because it's just, that's the typical discussion even today. So while I did that kind of things in the mainstream or entering the mainstream, I was also doing radical experimentation, and the most radical one I did perhaps is this baked in situ earth houses, and with the help of Ray Meeker, who's a Californian ceramist in that area where I had my office. I did my PhD on his work as well, but he had followed up the idea of cooking large structures, and through all the work I did with studying kilns and understanding where the heat is wasted, Ray Meeker managed to successfully cook mud houses in situ. It's a brick house, but it's fired in situ. And I had built about 3 houses in this method, but this one I'm showing you, it's homes for homeless children. Basically what it does is, you build a mud house with mud mortar. You don't even need cement. That's the beauty of it, because fire is the cement. It's a very radical experimentation. There are all these holes in the brick wall, you see, for oxygen to come. You have to build it like an oven, like a grill, actually. And the whole idea is, remember I said that about 40% of the heat is wasted in the kiln wall. So here the idea is to make, actually before it performs as a house, it performs as a kiln. So it's full of bricks with which the house is not a consumer of building materials, but a producer of local economy almost. And through that house, which you're cooking in situ, you're also producing all of these bricks. Then you cook it for 3 or 4 days, and then the material gets vitrified. The alchemy happens, and then the house shrinks the cracks that come, these cracks are actually in the insulation, but they can be structural cracks because huge temperatures, and they will come down like an arch. It will still be stable. But Earth will have become waterproof through this. So for me, it was a very intriguing technology. I did it actually to check certain things in my PhD, where I was measuring more what happens really. And I just want to show that I became more and more fearless through more and more projects, and my attitude shifted. I started feeling, okay, life is short. Try to learn whatever you can, you know, and share the joy and the confidence for the younger people, to encourage them to please do experiments and don't just repeat what people did, especially when you know it is wrong. So critically think and then do the experiments. So yeah, so these kind of projects were producing a lot of building materials. And this is not my project, this is a project of Rainmaker. He was producing, because he's a potter, he was producing all kinds of things. And you know, we in architecture and building industry, there's so much ceramics, from tiles, wash basins, toilet pans, water spouts, gargoyles, everything, furniture. You can do so many things with ceramic. And you know, Rainmaker, you know, even my project, in some of his houses, he had fired some of the cones. That was my original relation with him. He was helping me to get good quality, but he also needs a lot of products to fill a house because of his experimentation. So the moment you feel lonely when you're experimenting, you realize that actually suddenly it's a small world, and you get connected with so many other people who are doing all that, you know, and then you realize that it's quite fun to be on that side. And anyway, so this is how it turned out. And you know, we also finished this was a very low budget, almost no budget project for homeless children. And we have also finished the waterproofing surface with broken tiles and so on. And now I want to tell you something about ferrocement. How am I doing with the time? Is it okay? Still a little bit. I want to also have some, or maybe I'll tell less and you all can ask questions, okay? Oh, really? But I don't want to bore you also, so. No, it's okay? All right. So, because now it's getting a little technical, okay? So, interval of the movie. No, what I found out, because as I told you, I love concrete and cement, and because there's so much knowledge in the chemicals of it, that I had studied some of it when I was young. But also I came to know what are the problems of overusing it. So at one point I realized, you know, inspired by the work of Nervi, and you know, because I knew a lot of engineering, I had to learn to do some of my projects. I realized that, because this is one basic thing you know about concrete, that the bigger the span, like already this is too big a span, after a certain span, maybe after half of the span, concrete's whole, it goes into a crazy cycle that the self-weight is more than the weight it is going to carry. And then it's so heavy that you have to design your beam suddenly a lot more, and then the weight is so much more. Then it's like suddenly, it's a crazy thing for me philosophically, because on one hand, concrete is best when you have bigger spans, but the bigger the span, the bigger the weight. So I used to be in this dilemma. And then I used to understand, and then I had started doing those filler slabs, you know, false, those waffle slab things to formwork. So I started paying a lot of attention to formwork. And I realized that Nervi was using a lot of, he started using a combination of ferrocement, which is to make the weight light in all those big structures he did in Rome and all that. He was like in the middle of such a thing, he would probably, but he was making more sections and putting, instead of thick concrete, he was doing very thin ferrocement with very thin fibers and making the concrete very light. Today we call it ferrocement. Ferrocement is when you use chicken mesh mostly, and very small diameter bar, maybe 3 millimeter, maybe 6 millimeter, but very little steel. But it is a very different engineering as concrete. It is very difficult to calculate also, because with concrete you put steel, and where there is tension, the concrete and steel, they take tension and compression that you would know, and there is a neutral axis, and the steel has to bend according to the bending moment diagram. Now, in the main difference with ferrocement, why it is using so little steel, is that the steel is positioned in the middle of the neutral axis, not higher and lower. And that means that it is treated more like a new homogeneous material which has got tension and compression properties, not treated like to make a beam, So, in this approach, it means that it only works if it is very thin, 2.5 centimeters max. Instead, what you have to do is you have to come up with interesting forms of folding, bending, like paper forms, if you give it a form, the form gives rigidity. You cannot, if your span is bigger, you cannot, in short, make it thicker. It will become like concrete. Same materials, right? But the behavior is different, because what happens is, what you have to do, if I have to do this, if there's no floor on top, I have to make folds and bends, and then it will become rigid, and then I can use ferrocement. Okay. So I started this image I'm doing since, I don't know, 25 years at least. I had shown you my experiments with the potential of vernacular materials to be further optimized, to take local materials and skills and use them in a totally different way. That's another approach, like all those terracotta things. Using ancient timeless materials, but in radically new ways, because it's more clever, and you build many more square meters with much little material through knowledge. That's the second group of examples. And the third is high embodied man-made materials. How do you further keep optimizing it? So I have a whole section of work that is done on ferrocement, on alternative fibers like glass fiber. I'm following the work of people who are doing carbon fiber and natural fibers and all that. And I just want to show you two examples of two groups of work in this. One is prefabricated, coming back to the Lego example, I mean, where you have to put up very quickly post-disaster, etc. And many times due to migration nowadays, we have all these requirements of urgent housing. I started doing this research for housing, towards ferrocement, towards housing, after I experienced a tsunami. And I felt like when people are hurrying up, a lot of money is wasted. Just after the tsunami, everyone's doing quickly. It looks nice for a few months, and then it looks even worse because it's done in haste. So I started thinking about what can be done that can put up a system. So one of, that can be able to stack these houses in a week's time, and ergonomically designing 60 centimeter container walls or 30 centimeter for the different things you need to store in a house. And the ferrocement, because it's a box, because it's folded, it becomes rigid and strong. And the space is used as a storage, so they don't need furniture. And it can be the same pieces are assembled for an office, for whatever actually. And all those, the roof is also folded ferrocement, the fins, all of this. And also I tried to make it produced in a kind of, that was my social sustainability strategy, to produce these elements in the backyard of the masons' houses, or not, to make it like a homemade style thing a little bit, so that everyone can learn it. It's very easy to do, but the engineer goes to their places, and maybe somebody has one mold and he does only that size for extra income if they need. But the knowledge is passed on to their children and to everybody, because it's something like knitting, or cooking. You see your parents do it and you know it. So I thought of trying that out, and that whenever a house has to be assembled, we can collect these pieces and put it up. This was shown in the 2016 Venice Biennale. Look, here you see one kitchen unit where, because that system allows you to design anything, so everything could be designed inside. And in order to make this more palatable for Indians at least, I'm sure in Switzerland everybody loves the grey aspect of cement, but in our taste it's not. All the buildings that are not maintained and run down are all grey, and in India you have to, people will put other layers and tiles. So I wanted to embed, like stucco, some of the oxide colors into the cement. And in a kind of Indian style, they are quite dark, not pastel shades. But yeah, you see this from the other side. And you see on the right-hand side, there is a sanitation unit. Actually, it has on that pink color, you see that is a shower cubicle, and on the other side you have a toilet, and in the middle you have a wash basin and the entrance, and you have a roof that is spanning 4.5 meters with that folded form. So I have used the opportunity of these exhibitions sometimes, to collaborate with very good engineers like Mike Schleich of Schleich, Bergermann and Partner. I'm doing a workshop here for the engineering students, and they produced the pieces for Venice Biennale. So I finally got the chance and the budget to test. I was dying to know all these years. I knew there will be better seismic properties because it has chicken mesh, so it won't just break, it will bend. Or it's somehow I wanted, for me to see this is very rewarding, And so we have established now that it has a lot of ductile properties, and also these kind of things can be put up in a day compared to a lot of ugly toilets you see around, which have to be for provisional use and all that. So I'm doing a whole lot of things with ferrocement because I find this material very promising. I'm going to share some images. I had recently in 2020 a solo show at the Louisiana Museum of Modern Art where all my experiments and my architecture was exhibited under their Architect Studio series. And yeah, this picture is from there, but all my approach was covered, and the exhibition was called Taking Time. And it was not about being only slow, it was about proactively taking time. Instead of saying, let's save time, let's rush about, I'm saying, no, let's take the time to live, but it's not like this thing is taking time, but it's like taking time as a most underutilized human resource. I don't think it is being optimized more than other natural resources. I feel if the human time is used consciously, we won't be doing a lot of nonsense. This is my opinion. So yeah. So for prefabricated, I'm doing a lot of things with ferrocement. I think it's very versatile. It's the material that most fascinates me at the moment, or continues to fascinate me. I see more promise in it. I think for cast in situ, there are many other endless things possible, but I started studying origami crease patterns. I took some classic ones, and since this piece is only 1.5 centimeter thick, like 1.5 to 2.5 centimeters thick, it's so light that I started toying with the idea of trying to cast it on paper. And this was 10 years ago, where Amazon was just, in my opinion, starting, At that time I was in Australia, and I did it as a student project, not a student drill, but I involved my students in the lab to try and test, that if there is a disaster and you have to quickly go and put up housing, even if we have that other housing system, some multi-purpose halls, some things have to be done in situ, and you could just carry, or even for shelter, you could carry your formwork by unfolding it and opening it. Same way the mesh could be folded in that. See, shells have a very complicated formwork because of the curve, especially in the post-industrial age. People find it very expensive. In this case, all the rectangular sheets remain rectangular. They are just faceted. It's just flat things are bent and no wastage. All these steels are just the same roll in which they're available, but they're just bent and stitched together. And that was just the 1:2 scale mock-up in 4 days put up with just putting up the form, putting up the mesh, and then just plastering it. And here you see some of the very simple tools with which you can, I've managed in the last days to explain, what all is possible still in the future, So these are all my material palettes. I do it in a way, I try to communicate without lectures actually. I like my architecture to speak for itself, and in my exhibitions, if you just spend a few hours, everything you can see, because you have actual materials like cooking, all the ingredients are there and you see what has to mix with what. And in the background, you have 1 to 5 scale tectonic models in the real material. So you see everything and you put it together, all the scales. And finally, the other area that I started exploring ever since I am more in the developed society where, developed countries are producing a lot of urban waste compared to the previous way of living, where much more biological waste was produced. And now I feel that architecture has the capacity to permanently absorb all that, because in architecture we are interested in the void, only what we didn't build. Remember in the beginning I was saying, you can build it with whatever, we don't need to have any fetish, whatever is lying around. And in that spirit, I started when I was in Spain. I was asked, I was in Australia. I was invited by Benedetta Tagliabue to put up a pavilion. 6 architects were invited to do some temporary pavilion. And I was thinking, okay, what is the waste? What is like? My project was called Library of Lost Books. So I thought I'll just start seeing what you can do with books. And I realized there are magazines and books. There's so much waste of books, and it's a very costly thing. Most cities are burning or pulping. It's very expensive to dispose books because they are very heavy to transport, to store everything. So this is in Museo Eco in Madrid with the students. When I had my exhibition, I made an area for our explorations, and we had made sofas out of magazines. We said whatever they have here, we are going to work with that. It's a gallery. What is a local material? They told us they have a lot of catalogs unused, and we said we'll build everything with that. So they did lots of ideas. And this sofas actually really, you can jump on them because the pages, it's the form, the pages push against each other, so they are interlocked. I mean, it's very difficult to open those. So these are the things which students get to work with me, is to leave your preconceived ideas and explore and make those accidental experiential discoveries and chance encounters with knowledge, and to take it forward when you recognize something. But I myself, what I eventually did here is I was in Spain, so I was eating all of these nice hams and everything, and I was looking for vernacular technology, what is the household, the vacuum packing things that I saw. I said, okay, let's use that to vacuum pack the book, to make the point also about the overuse of, we are now going digital, but still we are producing a lot of waste through books. So, and also to make it rigid and waterproof. I thought of, theoretically, we are cutting down a lot of wood to make a lot of trees to make books, and now we are not using it. So I was thinking, let's try to make canopies or try to make like new trees with the waste. And if it's a pavilion for a couple of months, why should we even buy anything? Just buy the minimum, take all the garbage. This was in the square where there is a Filmoteca, and up there is a library. So that's why we took all their waste books literally from the spot, and we made this kind of thing. And the support system, we already planned the recycling. Many times we are planning it right in the beginning. So this was going towards a school. school's infrastructure, and they liked it very much. Eventually they wanted to keep it, and I told them it's not designed for so long. But even here you'll see the benches and with books, magazines, it has been actually used. And yeah, it's like borrowing from the garbage for 4 months, and just returning somehow. So yeah, these are the kind of other explorations I'm doing, and I'm very interested in urban waste. I'm also interested in urban waste in the process of construction, not only in the final application. There's a lot of things to be designed in architectural processes, like formwork, scaffolding, so many things. So yeah, I'm doing all that, for that homes for homeless children, because it was all vitrified, baked homes. I used glass, which is also vitrified from the recycled thing, for the toilet units to make it waterproof, and for the roofing, to close the roof with broken chai cups, to do masonry with them and just absorb them. So my strategy has become, in academia as a professor, what I try to do is to allow my students to have this kind of real encounters, with real materials, real scale, real people, and real place. So that it's not just one semester after the other of concept, 6 months, another concept, again concept. And we don't realize that till the end, design is going on. The integration of design, of engineering, of climate, of this and that. So I try to create this kind of workshops. In this case, when I was teaching at the AA, we were doing watchtowers. Took a week's work. But even in this project, I had students from, some from ETH Zurich, but it was an open workshop, some from TU Berlin. It was a mix of students. This was in Mexico, where the only thing we found there, because it was a 2-day workshop, so the students managed to collect Tetra Pak from the garbage, and we did all kinds of things. Finally, we realized it's a very, very difficult material to dismantle, because it has 4 different layers, and nobody knows what to do with it. The only thing they do is they put more chemicals and make a new material which is even worse somehow, and use it as a plate, So what we did here, it is of course a playful exercise. We realized it's so sophisticated and waterproof. We filled sand, and partly we filled water back and used them as bricks to make, this is in Mexico City. But I also sometimes, these projects are not made to say, okay, the future of architecture is by using books or bottles. It's not what I'm saying. I'm trying to challenge the students and make them discover that it's not like I'm special and I did some genius magical things. Every person, if they are given just 2-3 days to be free, or 1 week, each of them do things. Really, I do believe that everybody is creative and everybody is intelligent, and everybody's, if you let it just some room, sometime only 2 or 3 days. So here, for example, if there's nothing else to do, this is in Segovia in the HEIA Festival, we have to distribute water in an event. So we just give the students a chance to understand how, like this Eladio DST forms, how do you build it? How do you construct? How do you do formwork? How do you develop the geometry? How do you make guides? This is another project in Ahmedabad where we are doing a project on denim waste. Not even waste, the heaps and mountains of denim, which is new denim wasted. Basically, all the jeans that they make for the rest of the world are made there. And then they cut out that portion, and all the denim, new denim, which is not required, is just lying, and it's an environmental hazard. I heard in China there are people who are looking more blue from the pollution of that. But these are not, I'm not saying that keep on wasting and we'll do, but I feel in academia we can make a random thing like waste denim into an engineering problem, or to make it into a studio. Like the issue is use this, And in my methods, because I really believe that the hands are thinking hands. I believe in embodied learning through experience. I often bring craftsmen or artisans or whoever, because I don't believe in the design build approach that let's all go. I'm not criticizing it, but I've seen a lot of people from the West, they'll go to Africa or Mexico and build some rammed earth, slowly. But I believe, because I come from that side, I believe need to reinvent. There are very good masons out there. You learn to be an architect with them on par. If there are artisans doing it, let them come into the studio, like co-create. So I try to set up all of this and do. And now I'm just going to share, few of the, like in the last years, more my work started getting known. This is David Chipperfield's Biennale in 2012. I think that's where a lot of more people in the world, actually some Swiss gallery, I forgot which gallery, wanted to buy this table, which I brought from my house, and gave me a blank check. But I said no, because it's my dining table from my house. Sometimes my friends tell me, you should have just taken it and made yourself another table. But I have not been so much commercial minded, and I've just been, nowadays I'm learning this aspect a bit because I live in a different context, but I was just purely doing it for the art of it somehow. It's an exhibition, so okay. So I've, this is what I created, the entire house in full scale we had built here, because it was called Common Ground. And you could see, for example, I think here you see, you see here, there is a terracotta roof. I told David, for me, the common ground is, architecture is actually, the building culture is a common ground. If the Romans have discovered the arch, we are all building on the arch. It's not like, because we have one gravity and we are more common than different. And I wanted to establish that. And if the house inserted here, what it does is you see that above it, there's a terracotta roof with a lot of wood. Below it there is an arch here, you can't see. It's exactly coincidentally the same arch in the doorway in Venice, because it's catenary, it has to be that. By coincidence, same size also. But you see the progress over time. You see their columns built in the pre-industrial bricks, and mine, because it's a developing country where I can still access that. But the same lime, the same brick, and both, I had to stitch the two plans in such a way that their columns can stand inside. So it was very nicely spatially organized. But the building of the Arsenale, it was a tribute to that, because thanks to the building in ruin, the construction is revealed. And I wanted to create an equivalent unfinished structure of today, where the construction is also then revealed, without any poster, without anything, and let the architecture speak for itself, and artisans can find what is interesting for them, engineers, what is interesting for them. And we did few experiments that I didn't manage to do in my own house, because I always wanted to make that same roof with bottles, wine bottles. But since I was in Italy, I thought I have to do something with their wine bottles. So that's what we did. But, here also you see, and in fact, oh my, what a pity. Sari, who's just next to me, she was my intern, and she lives now in Freiburg. She's the one I wanted to invite for the dinner later. And oh, it's a pity, she's not here. But yeah, so some of the students, who have worked, she was just a second-year student in Mendrisio, but they got to experience, through that one-year internship, from design to concept to execution, quantities, engineering, everything, and site supervision. She's one of the, I've found the amount of progress, and there are craftsmen, there were all these, this is my, team member from Australia, where I was then based. And all of this was designed. Even people don't ask the key point here, how did we manage this? Because in Venice, they give you a very conservative load permissibility. And many, many very important architects were reducing the design of much smaller things. And when David told me that, when we had a Skype, and he said, oh my God, this weight cannot be. And I said to him, what is the permissible load per square meter? And they all started looking, even the engineer, nobody had the figure up front. I said, so let's talk another day, you send me the figure. So he sent the figure, and they told the same answer to all the participants, and everybody changed their design. I said, how much should I reduce the weight? Like, how are the other people operating? Like, if I don't know how is it permissible, should I just say it's not possible? I think we've got used to accepting that this is not possible, that is not possible. But if you just go home and do the math, it is possible if you know exactly what you have to do. And we found a way to spread the load. Just spread it more equally, and it was fine. I sent him the calculation, and they all were very surprised that I landed up building a unprecedented full scale, full house inside the house with such a low foundation. But you see, I was doing it mostly for also my students to learn. Anyway, I'll just end with a few more images of other mainstream projects. This is a completely concrete structure. And for this, I was often accused that why am I building concrete with so much concrete and I'm supposed to be eco. I said, you said that, I didn't say that, you know. But for me, the thing is, I did 3 calculations, 3 whole building reiterations to be able to reduce 125 cubic meters of concrete to only 70. By going on leaning the pillar, reducing the span, doing this and that. And finally, it is because the beams here, they have this shape to reduce in profile what you can. It's a ferro-cement formwork that has been used and the concrete is poured. So there are many reasons why that was possible. See, the formwork is lifted there by hand. But even in my concrete buildings, like the town hall complex in Auroville, or these ferro-cement railings, you know, a lot of these buildings are done with a lot of consciousness of a lot of reducing over-design and habitual details. This is a daycare center for children from very challenging backgrounds. A library for Braille. Very humble buildings. These are all very low budget public buildings. But I want to end with this, the fact that, you know, it was mentioned that I live in Auroville. I'd started my practice there. There was a pedestrian city of 50,000 population that was designed by Roger Anger, a Parisian architect. He had tried to mainly integrate tall buildings in the low-rise fabric instead of just have skyscrapers randomly dropped here and there like today. So that a lot of these buildings look like from that time like Brasilia, but it's not actually like that. These are all so tightly interconnected because these are covered walkways to create car-free city. It was a very progressive plan. I landed up building in that context. This is a youth hostel of mine in an area which was a barren land in which they had put in all these trees and all that. And so apart from all the architecture, I'm also working a lot, and I want to just share and mention without discussing too much that I'm working also on a macro scale level of planning and buildings. Like this is a co-housing arm of 8,000 people with small clusters of co-housing, 40 to 60 people sharing facility within the vertical. And using all these technologies, but also green infrastructure. I was also here, you see Jan Gale. I was in Stuttgart as a guest professor inquiring into all these mobility aspects and you know, trying to work a lot with other disciplines in an interdisciplinary way to take the best concepts from mobility to energy management or integral management of wastewater and rainwater harvesting. You know, you see there's some prototypes in the background. The pink is a power generating paint which you can put on concrete. It's being researched by some German company, or some latest generation of printable solar panels, denim, all these materials. So with this kind of project, which was exhibited, the urban design in 1:100 scale in Louisiana, I want to end with this comment that I think in the post-industrial era, we have to take care of density and human footprint, but I think it is a common aspiration for all of us. I feel all architects have to really think, how can we retain the human scale? The human scale in the tall towers or whatever we create, in the mega cities we create, but in the industrial process, how can the processes retain the human scale? Just because we are more people in a family, it doesn't mean we have to have no intimacy. So I think it's really the thing that is endangered today is the human scale. And that is my concern with which I would like to leave you with that concern to join the exploration, to find a way to progress where we humans biologically have not changed so much and emotionally also not. So let's not become victims of the tools we create and all that, but to create something that is worthy of us, you know, and to have a good life. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you very much for the presentation. It was extremely inspiring. I guess there are some questions. I can hand the microphone to anyone who has any question.
Thank you a lot for the lecture. I was wondering how Indian people and also yourself see the Western influence on the country, on its architecture, by Le Corbusier building in India, by Louis Kahn coming. Was this a blessing or not really?
No, I think it was, it's not a blessing, or I think it just shows also something about India, that it is a very receptive place. It has allowed some of those people to create things that their own homes didn't let them do. So it speaks a little bit of India's openness. And I think people in India, they in general are very proud and they celebrate. I think, but because we are a post-colonial, we are victims of colonization, sometimes we have maybe a tendency to be overawed by the work of others. You know, we are recently coming out of this colonial hangover, I think. It takes a lot of time to undoctrinate yourself. And I think on the contrary, it's great that we appreciate what the guests have come and done. But it's important that we also celebrate what the people there have done over such a long surviving civilization where the values, etc., are still very relevant and very, very, I find a lot of the knowledge of old civilizations, they know how to survive, they are agile, they know how to respond to any change. And I think that is also important to value and honor. I think in countries like India, we don't start design by going to Neufert. We are taught about first principles, and then where there is a standard you'll use. If it's not there, you won't, you know. So they appreciate a lot of things from the West, and I think there is a lot to be appreciated as well. Only thing, if it is oppressively applied, where people stop thinking, I think the problem is not whatever we invented, it's when we are passive in the way we apply. That is the concern, I think, here or there, I would say. But about Le Corbusier in particular, I think his architecture is more appreciated than his urban design, also by me.
Thank you for the lecture. You've talked a lot about vernacular craftsmanship and how it influences your work, but like, what about vernacular architecture? Does it also influence you or not really?
I'm actually, if I'm going to be very honest, I'm like not driven by nostalgia at all. I'm not, I have nothing against it. I appreciate when I go somewhere, but I'm not a person who will say, oh, the good old days, you know. I'm not like, basically I'm not like, I'm very excited about the future. So I'm not looking at the vernacular with rosy eyes. I just feel there is more, if there is value in something, I like to appreciate what is left behind. It belongs to our today's landscape. In that way, it's present for me. And I take the vernacular as a measuring bar to not do worse than them. Because if we can measure if we progress or not. Our performance should be more and not less. Thank you for staying for such a long lecture at the end of a day. I thought I'm going to make it more with pictures and all, but I realized later it was quite technical after all.
Well, first of all, I wanted to say I really, really appreciated your lecture. Just thrilling. But then I think of you from India, and you try to craftsmanship, and then I think, well, in the Western world, in for example Switzerland, Western Europe, is it too late to experience what you can still experience in India? Because our pottery isn't produced by craftsmen in Switzerland. It's all imported from China and India, you know. So these skills...
Look, y'all have started importing even lecturers.
Exactly, exactly. So happily our students can go to workshops to India and other places to experience from themselves, but the chance to then develop this in our countries, highly industrialized and sophisticated, it's difficult. How one looks at your pictures, it's disconnected of this world. It's a pastime for us, and it's still a reality in the countries like India.
It is true, but it's not. If you look at the earlier images, what I showed you of Bombay, where I come from, if you just see Bombay, Hong Kong and everything, you know what I came from and what I created. It's not like India's like that, okay? And when you travel, you'll find out immediately what it took me to create these projects and how many years of persistence. Because for me, where I again want to say I feel we are more common than different. When I come to Switzerland, I do not feel disconnected, actually. And or when I'm in Australia for that matter. What I feel only sad is that people in certain wealthy countries, they think that wealth is only something external, as it's only the capital in the bank balance. But actually, richness is not that. Richness is how good are you feeling. Like, you know, if your grandmother can make you a better cake than you can get in the industrially made cake version, okay? And if today, you being very busy person, if you still can make that cake yourself, and or pay someone to make it, forget about the money and what is a habit. What do you prefer? That personally made, or take massage for that matter. Do you prefer a machine or that person? What do you prefer? We are not so different. We all know what we prefer. What is a habit is one thing. What do we prefer? So, whatever habit is going on, what are we capable of creating? And I believe, I didn't go there with the baggage that I'm going to fix this environmental problem like Greta Thunberg. I'm not like that by attitude, okay? I am not that type of activist. I'm an architect who was trying to create the most beautiful thing I could give people, regardless of whatever budget, the most conscious. I was looking for beauty, love, and luxury. This is for me what is the best life you can have. And I had that life, even though if I actually didn't have anything to do with that, I had no insurances, I had no security. I've seen a lot of things happen in my own family where we have then what imprint that kind of thing leaves on us. So when I'm here, I enjoy the insurances, but I know also that I am not, if an accident happens, I will not be able to undo that. I will get the care for it. I can't live my whole life based on some kind of, I mean, after all, I'm a human, and the systems are created for me to be more human. Like, I think that I am able to enjoy technology and everything. I'm very excited, from artificial intelligence to everything technology does, this gadget. But I feel it is almost a poor use of those things when the human consciousness, like if people are such a rich country and they're not spending in the things that matter, in the time with each other, or if I could afford that kind of thing, I would eat so well. I would take the time. Eat well means not to buy an expensive. Take the time to eat. Take twice the time to sit on a dinner table. But that's not what I get to see. So coming back to what you were saying about the hand skills and things I valued, I didn't look for the hand skill. I was a Bombayite who had not seen all that either. I saw some of it. I was not looking for the hand skill. I was looking for the human qualities to celebrate. And that is, if it is a skill, it's a skill. It's the brain, it's the thoughts, it's the consciousness actually behind everything. I feel the most rich quality is the more evolved consciousness. And the more present you can be in your reality, maybe I'm talking too much Indian stuff, but that's what I think. So I'm not going to come here and say, you know, I recently met Peter Zumthor, and we are having some correspondence. He was in India. He wanted to meet. We have exchanged. I've spent some time with him in Delhi. You know, there's so much common ground. Okay, his context is different. The budgets and how he will have to charge, all this is one. But if I were to just exchange, you know, that we are talking this conversation today, it's because we have a common ground. And actually, that's why I told him that I'm not looking for the vernacular. I'm not coming here to do skills. I'm not coming to my studio and expecting them to do this kind of buildings. Even I'm not expecting myself to do this kind of buildings again. I'm going to the whichever context, and I am trying to undo the dogma on one side and limiting beliefs that I find. I'm not letting the limiting belief take a hold in my head. I want to remain pure from someone else's limiting belief. You can't do this, your women can't do that and all. I said, okay, that's your problem. I'm not going to take that thought and put it in my head. Now I'm going to think, oh, really? Women can't do that? No, I don't do that. So I just think, what can I create? And I think, okay, I'm given these resources. These are the resources around me, and I want to create the best thing possible. And a lot of times, a lot of things that are done in this industrial way are not the best thing. And you know why I know it? By the simple fact, if the European discourse and the targets of energy concerns they have and everything else, if there was nothing to criticize in Europe, I wouldn't be here. The very fact that I have, you know, most of my contemporaries from India, many known people, they actually they go abroad to Europe or the US to study and go back and practice. In my case, I have come because of the teaching offers I've been getting everywhere. I'm here because that's why I don't get into any argument. I tell them, you can't tell me, like they often tell me in Germany, yeah, this is very good, but wir sind ja in Deutschland. So how is that going to? I said, this is not a sentence to be said, because the fact is you are free humans, you've built in your way, you've created a man-made problem, you've created man-made social, economic and environmental problems, and you are continuing to make it if you don't undo. But you yourself have made targets to reduce it. It's not me coming and saying, be like me. You are finding something in the work I did. I explored it for my context actually, to see how can I give humans something they deserve more. We are worthy of something more wise and more artistic and more refined. And how can that be given? And not to feel like a victim of the construction culture. I just feel I'm an architect. I'm not waiting for the building industry to tell me what I'm going to use. I'm not doing it. And that's what, even here, I'm not, if I like a system, great, I'll use it, but not everything, because I'm an architect. That's all. In that way, I think we are common. You know, and if everything that is happening here would be fine as it is, we wouldn't be having any debate. And if we are having a debate, that means we have to change something. And some of my work was about changing that thing, but not in this context, in mine. I think though the strategies are quite similar, the applications will be local.
I might have a question. I want to thank you for the inspiring lectures and also for empowering and emancipating the concept of naivety, unknownness, and accident, which I think is extremely judged by society in general. And I'll go back to the beginning of your presentation where you show these pictures of Mumbai with the slums and at the same time the high-rise skyscraping. And then wondering about the bricks, saying that the gravity is always the same in what change in construction, why are we building so differently? And then doing a parallel with the presentation of yours of the caban, like the little hut that you did of your house, and then the second house that you presented, which is a completely different type of house, but still a house. And for me, when you talk about like how to use technology and what does it change in our human kind of a comparison to architectures, it always falls back to comfort. So what is the comfort that we are looking for in the architecture that we're doing, and what is the answer that we're giving back? So my, let's say, question will be about what is your perception about comfort also in your way that you're, like, I don't know, living it in your experimentation of housing yourself in your house?
It's a very beautiful question. I have actually been very careful how much comfort to provide. I don't have the notion of only a house with comfort, you know. I try to analyze. I also don't like too comfortable life, because tomorrow I want to be free to be different. I don't want to be stuck with whatever I built for yesterday. So the comfort I try to provide is climatic. Okay, climatic comfort, absolutely. I try to use all my knowledge of the sun's movement and the material behavior and all the passive principles to give the best, not the solar passive, what it is meant here, but, you know, like to take the most out of the behavior of building physics. That I try to provide. I try to provide a psychological comfort. I believe in giving very soothing spaces, very soothing. I want to always create soothing spaces because I believe that architecture has the power to make you feel better. So in every situation, I try to give that comfort. But I don't like to give the type of things that make you in your comfort zone. I don't like to make the furniture stuck. I like to little bit challenge, and the house can keep growing with you. I definitely try very hard that I'm not too much giving, yes, shelter, but it's not so healthy to be in the comfort zone. Because think of Darwin's theory. The one who evolves, they survive. You have to evolve. You have to experiment to evolve. Those who experiment, they will take over. That's my feeling.
Thank you very much.
And the children have to grow in that house, not only with the burden of the parents. So that's my opinion.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? So then I don't know if there is any other question. Otherwise, I kindly invite you to continue more spontaneously upstairs. There's an upper that is waiting for us.
Thank you.
And thank you again for the inspiring lecture.
Thank you for having me.